Yo, yo, yo. What's going on, guys? We are about to recap for season 3 tonight. If you're on the East Coast, that's 9 p.m. It's back. You know what I'm talking about. We're back. Apparently, it's supposed to be a good one. Make sure this is bigger. It's supposed to be a good one. Okay. Think we're good. Think we're good. Okay, let's check it out. Shout out to New Rock Stars. Oh, no audio. Hold on. Alright.
Season 3. We're going to explain everything that happened in season
Oh, this is
1
not
and
New
in
Rock
season
Stars.
2.
Shout out
We're
to
gonna go
Screen
over
Crush.
all
My
of the
bad.
dragons, the most important characters, the houses, the armies, and who is fighting who and where. So, the first two House of the Dragon seasons cover about roughly 31 years. Don't worry, we are going to mark all the time jumps in the show. The Targaryens are one of the many dragon lords from the Valyrian Freehold, which was located in Essos. That's the continent that's to the east of Westeros. Old Valyria was the greatest city in the world, and with their dragons, they ruled Essos for the better part of 5,000 years. But about 234 years before Rhaenyra was crowned queen, the Doom of Valyria decimated the empire. Old Valyria was surrounded by 14 volcanoes, and they all erupted at the same time, burning all of the dragon lords and even their thousands of dragons. But the Targaryens survived. 12 years earlier, Daenerys Targaryen had a dream that foretold the Doom, and these dreams are actually visions of the future, and they're very important in the show. So the Targaryens sailed to Westeros and settled on the island of Dragonstone. However, they weren't the only survivors. There were also the Valerians and House Celtigar, but the Targaryens had dragons. About 100 years after the Doom, Aegon conquered the Seven Kingdoms with his sister wives and their 3 massive dragons, and Vhagar was one of them. And according to the legends, Aegon was motivated to conquer Westeros because he had a dream about the White Walkers. So he believed that he must unite Westeros before the Long Night. This prophecy became the Song of Ice and Fire, and Aegon
Before we go on, can I just say that Game of Thrones, I'm blanking on the writer of Game of Thrones. I know his name. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I cannot get it out. But best show of all time. I think we can all agree. Best show of all time. And not only are they the best show of all time, but the spin-offs has been elite. Have to give you your praise. Them boys at and girls at HBO Max or HBO, whatever you want to call it, have been cooking. Let's continue.
decides that from his blood, the prince that was promised will be born.
He's the prince that was promised.
Forgive me, my lady. I thought that was Stannis.
But 100 years after Aegon's conquest, the realm faced a succession crisis, and this is how Season 1 begins. The year is 101 AC, and the AC stands for after Aegon's conquest. The king is Jaehaerys, Aegon's grandson, but he's very old and all of his sons are dead. The heirs in consideration are his 2 eldest grandchildren, Rhaenys and Viserys. Now Viserys is chosen over Rhaenys, mostly because she's a woman and girls aren't allowed to sit on the Iron Throne.
She can't do that. Shoot her or something.
Jeez.
What's up?
My little car ran out of gas. Now I can't go anywhere.
Oh, dude, you're right.
Shout out to
Gas is
Screen Crush,
crazy
but
expensive
damn,
right now.
them
It's over
ads are
$5
annoying.
a gallon where I live. But I I always find the cheapest gas in my area by using the free Upside app, and then I get Clotus's daughter Rhaenyra. So, gas using the promo code SpringCrush. You don't want to miss out. It's a great app. Now, back to what I was saying. 11 years later, Viserys is an okay king, but he faces his own succession crisis. All of his sons died at childbirth, and his only child is his daughter Rhaenyra. So, his male heir is his youngest brother Daemon, and he's kind of problematic. After his wife and newborn son die in childbirth, Daemon makes a really bad joke about it.
The heir for a day.
So, in his anger, Viserys disinherits his brother and chooses Rhaenyra as his new heir. But in secret, Viserys tells Rhaenyra about Aegon's dream, and this becomes a powerful force of motivation for Rhaenyra. She also wants to be queen to prove to all those men that a woman can sit on the Iron Throne. But shortly after this, Viserys has to marry Alicent Hightower. She's Rhaenyra's best friend. This marriage is arranged by Alicent's father, Otto, who's also the Hand of the King. Now, the Hightowers are a very ancient house, and their city, Old Town, used to be the center of power and religion in Westeros before the Targaryens took over. So now, Otto is trying to regain that power through his royal grandkids, while Alicent is basically a tool for her father, and she has no choice in any matter for most of her life. 3 years later, Alicent gives Viserys a son named Aegon, and everyone expects Viserys to name him as his new heir. But Viserys refuses to betray his daughter, mostly out of guilt, so she is still his one true heir. Now, while all that is happening, Daemon started a war in the Stepstones after these islands were invaded by the Triarchy. These guys will be very important in Season 3.
So are they pirates or something?
Actually, the Triarchy is an alliance of 3 cities, Myr, Lys, and Tyrosh. So, Corlys Velaryon convinces Daemon to start this war. Corlys is the Lord of House Velaryon. He rules from Driftmark, not far from Dragonstone. He's also married to Rhaenys. Daemon kills the crab feeder, and 1 year later he returns to King's Landing as a conquering hero. The brothers make peace, but then Daemon tries to seduce Rhaenyra, his freaky teenage niece.
Ew, yeah, but why?
Because getting with Rhaenyra is his last chance to become king. But Daemon has performance issues, so Rhaenyra gets frisky with her royal bodyguard, Criston Cole. But Cole is a knight in the Kingsguard, so he made a vow of celibacy.
So he can't be kissing girls?
Exactly, and he broke his vow. And this kind of messes him up. But a spy saw Rhaenyra and Daemon smooching, and Otto tells Viserys, and he exiles Daemon again. Alicent overhears all of this, and when she confronts Rhaenyra about Daemon, Rhaenyra tells her the truth from a certain point of view.
Damon never touched me. I swear this to you, upon the memory of my life.
Afterwards, Rhaenyra has to marry Laenor Velaryon, the son of Rhaenys and Corlys, but Laenor has a secret.
Oh my God.
Criston wants Rhaenyra to run away with him, but she turns him down and he can't deal with the rejection, so he tells Alicent everything. That's not all. Earlier, Otto warns Alicent that,
And to secure her claims, you have to put your children to the sword.
and then she meets the shady Larys Strong, who just casually tells her that Rhaenyra drank abortion tea. So now, Alicent hates Rhaenyra. And during the wedding, Criston lashes out and he kills Laenor's lover in front of everyone.
So how did he get away with it?
Oh, he was simply honoring the long-lived tradition of killing somebody at a wedding.
Tradition!
And then the show jumps 10 whole years into the future. Everybody now has kids, and they all have dragons. Viserys and Alicent have 4 children, Aegon, Helaena, Aemon, and Daeron, who will finally appear in Season 3. Rhaenyra and Laenor have 3 strong boys, Jacaerys, Lucerys, and Joffrey, and they all obviously look exactly like their daddy, Harwin Strong. And everybody knows this, but Viserys pretend it's not true,
But see, they don't know that we know that they know.
which makes Alicent hate Rhaenyra even more. Alicent's boys and Criston Cole bully the strong boys, so Harwin attacks Criston, which gets him exiled. And Larys uses this as an opportunity to gain power and Alicent's loyalty. He uses his network of spies and assassins to kill his brother and father at Harrenhal. Also, Alicent is doing OnlyFans for Larys. But we're not really going to talk about that yet.
Oh, that's not right. No.
Daemon married Laena Velaryon, and they have 2 daughters, Baela and Rhaena. But they live in a self-imposed exile across the Narrow Sea since Daemon lost his claim to the throne, and with that, his purpose. Now, Laena is dying from pregnancy complications, so, you know what, guys, maybe incest is bad. And then she goes out on her own terms. So, there's an awkward family reunion for the funeral. Rhaenyra and Daemon finally get it on because I guess all it took was 2 crispy lovers to reignite their love story. Now, Laena was the rider of Vhagar, the biggest living dragon, and Aemon uses this tragic event to claim Skyzilla for himself. But then the kids get into a fight and he loses an eye.
Bastards.
So the adults fight about this, but Viserys takes Rhaenyra's side. Daemon and Rhaenyra need to get married, so they fake Laenor's death. He sails away with Buck from Daredevil Born Again, but he leaves behind his dragon, Sea Smoke. Another 6 years go by, and this is the last time jump in the show. So the year is 132 AC. If you've been keeping track, it's 20 years since Rhaenyra was named heir. Rhaenyra and Daemon have been living on Dragonstone, and they have 2 more sons named Aegon and Viserys. And this will totally not get confusing having 2 Aegons running around. But then, Corlys is injured in a battle against the Triarchy, and then his brother Vaemond makes the claim for Driftmark. Now, in theory, Luke is supposed to inherit Driftmark, but Vaemond basically calls him a bastard out in the open. And he gets away with it only because the Greens pretty much ruled the kingdom, since Viserys looks like this now.
What the heck happened to him?
Well, apparently this was a version of leprosy. He was cut many times by the Iron Throne, symbolizing how he was unfit to rule. But I'm pretty sure that all the family drama aged him up by like 50 years. So now we get a family dispute on who inherits Driftmark. After Rhaenyra reminds her dad about Aegon's dream, he gets out of bed and once again takes her side. He talks too much.
Yup. Okay, okay. Oh, I can do that. I bet. Yup. Okay, okay.
Fighting who and where. So the first 2 House of the Dragon seasons cover about roughly 31 years. And don't worry, we are going to mark all the time jumps in the show. The Targaryens are one of the many dragon lords from the Valyrian Freehold, which was located in Essos. That's the continent that's to the east of Westeros. Old Valyria was the greatest city in the world, and with their dragons, they ruled Essos for the better part of 5,000 years. But about 234 years before Rhaenyra was crowned queen, the Doom of Valyria decimated the empire. Old Valyria was surrounded by 14 volcanoes, and they all erupted at the same time, burning all of the dragon lords and even their thousands of dragons. But the Targaryens survived. 12 years earlier, Daenerys Targaryen had a dream that foretold the Doom, and these dreams are actually visions of the future, and they're very important in this show. So the Targaryens sailed to Westeros and settled on the island of Dragonstone. However, they weren't the only survivors. There were also the Valerians and House Celtigar, but the Targaryens had dragons. About 100 years after the Doom, Aegon conquered the 7 kingdoms with his sister wives and their 3 massive dragons, and Vhagar was one of them. And according to the legends, Aegon was motivated to conquer Westeros because he had a dream about the White Walkers. So he believed that he must unite Westeros before the Long Night. This prophecy became the Song of Ice and Fire, and Aegon prophesied that from his blood, the prince that was promised will be born.
He's the prince that was promised.
Forgive me, my lady, I thought that was Stannis.
But 100 years after Aegon's conquest, the realm faced a succession crisis, and this is how Season 1 begins. The year is 101 AC, and the AC stands for after Aegon's conquest. The king is Jaehaerys, Aegon's grandson, but he's very old and all of his sons are dead. The heirs in consideration are his 2 eldest grandchildren, Rhaenys and Viserys. Now Viserys is chosen over Rhaenys, mostly because she's a woman and girls aren't allowed to sit on the Iron Throne.
She can't do that. Shoot her or something.
Ah, jeez.
What's up?
My little car ran out of gas. Now I can't go anywhere.
Oh, dude, you're
Shout out
right.
to
Gas
Screen
is
Crush with
crazy
the
expensive
ads.
right now. It's
Can't do
over
it, my boy.
$5 a gallon where I live. But I always find the cheapest gas in my area by using the free Upside app. And then I get cash back every year. Viserys is an okay king, but he faces his own succession crisis. All of his sons died at childbirth, and his only child is his daughter Rhaenyra. So his male heir is his youngest brother Daemon, and he's kind of problematic. After his wife and newborn son die in
Shout to
childbirth,
Daemon.
Daemon makes a really bad joke about it.
The heir.
After all the
for
BS,
Daemon.
you go to like
So,
him.
in his anger, Viserys disinherits his brother and chooses Rhaenyra as his new heir. But in secret, Viserys tells Rhaenyra about Aegon's dream, and this becomes a powerful force of motivation for Rhaenyra. She also wants to be queen to prove to all those men that a woman can sit on the Iron Throne. But shortly after this, Viserys has to marry Alicent Hightower. She's Rhaenyra's best friend. This marriage is arranged by Alicent's father, Otto, who's also the Hand of the King. Now, the Hightowers are a very ancient house, and their city, Oldtown, used to be the center of power and religion in Westeros before the Targaryens took over. So now, Otto is trying to regain that power through his royal grandkids, while Alicent is basically a tool for her father, and she has no choice in any matter for most of her life. 3 years later, Alicent gives Viserys a son named Aegon, and everyone expects Viserys to name him as his new heir. But Viserys refuses to betray his daughter, mostly out of guilt, so she is still his one true heir. Now, while all that is happening, Daemon started a war in the Stepstones after these islands were invaded by the Triarchy. These guys will be very important in Season 3.
So what, are they pirates or something?
Actually, the Triarchy is an alliance of 3 cities, Myr, Lys, and Tyrosh. So, Corlys Velaryon convinces Daemon to start this war. Corlys is the Lord of House Velaryon, and he rules from Driftmark, not far from Dragon.
Can I just say, I'm so happy that the writers of House of the Dragon decide to put some important blacks in the show. Not just a throwaway, not just a couple extras at flea bottom, but some important blacks. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Instead, he's also married to Rhaenys. Daemon kills the crab feeder, and 1 year later he returns to King's Landing as a conquering hero. The brothers make peace, but then Daemon tries to seduce Rhaenyra, his freaking teenage niece.
Ew, yeah.
Hey, after you watch season 1 and 2, you grow to like Daemon, but that freaky niece thing they had going on creeped me out. I was confused. Daemon, he was a wilder.
But why?
Because getting with Rhaenyra is his last chance to become king.
Console.
But Daemon has performance issues, so Rhaenyra gets frisky with her royal bodyguard, Criston Cole. But Cole is a knight in the Kingsguard, so he made a vow of celibacy.
So we can't be kissing girls?
Another plot twist. You start off liking Criston Cole, and you grow to hate him. Absolutely hate him.
Exactly, and he broke his vow. And this kind of messes him up. But a spy saw Rhaenyra and Daemon smooching, and Otto tells Viserys, and he exiles Daemon again. Alicent overhears all of this, and when she confronts Rhaenyra about Daemon, Rhaenyra tells her the truth from a certain point of view.
Imagine finding out that your brother is cracking your daughter? Hell nah.
Daemon never touched me. I swear
Cap.
this to you, upon the memory of my mother.
Afterwards, Rhaenyra has to marry Laenor
Lying on your
Velaryon,
mom
the son
is
of
crazy.
Rhaenys and Corlys, but Laenor has a secret.
I don't like girls.
Criston wants Rhaenyra to run away with him, but she turns him down and he can't deal with the rejection, so he tells Alicent everything. But that's not all. Earlier, Otto warns Alicent that,
And to secure her claim, she'll have to put your children to the sword.
and then she meets the shady Larys Strong, who just casually tells her that Rhaenyra drank abortion tea. So now, Alicent
He
hates
a
Rhaenyra.
snitch.
And during the wedding, Criston lashes out and he kills Laenor's lover in front of everyone.
So how'd he get away with it?
Oh, he was simply honoring the long-lived tradition of killing somebody at a wedding.
Tradition!
And then the show jumps 10 whole years into the future. Everybody now has kids, and they all have dragons. Viserys and Alicent have 4 children, Aegon, Helaena, Aemond, and Daeron, who will finally appear in Season 3. Rhaenyra and Laenor have 3 strong boys, Jacaerys, Lucerys, and Joffrey, and they all obviously look exactly like their daddy, Harwin Strong. And everybody knows this, but Viserys pretends it's not true,
But see, they don't know that we know that they know.
which makes Alicent hate Rhaenyra even more. Alicent's boys and Criston Cole bully the strong boys, so Harwin attacks Criston, which gets him exiled. And Larys uses this as an opportunity to gain power and Alicent's loyalty, and he uses his network of spies and assassins to kill his brother and father at Harrenhal. Also, Alicent is doing OnlyFans for Larys. But we're not really going to talk about that.
Hey, the
though.
freaky feet
Oh,
stuff?
that's not right. No.
Daemon married Laena Velaryon.
Very
and they have 2
disappointed
daughters, Baela and Rhaena.
in you,
But
Allison.
they live in a self-imposed exile across the
Thought you were
narrow
better
sea
than
since
that.
Daemon lost his claim to the throne, and with
Anything
that,
to get
his
the job
purpose.
done, huh?
Now Laena is dying from pregnancy complications, so you know what, guys? Maybe incest is bad. And then she goes out on her own terms. So there's an awkward family reunion for the funeral. Rhaenyra and Daemon finally get it on because I guess all it took was two crispy lovers to reignite their love story. Now Laena was the rider of Vhagar, the biggest living dragon, and Aemond uses this tragic event to claim Skyzilla for himself. But then the kids get into a fight and he loses an eye.
Bastards.
So the adults fight about this, but Viserys takes Rhaenyra's side. Daemon and Rhaenyra need to get married, so they fake Laenor's death, and he sails away with Buck from Daredevil born again. But he leaves behind his dragon, Seasmoke. Another 6 years go by, and this is the last time jump in the show. So the year is 132 AC, and if you've been keeping track, it's 20 years since Rhaenyra was named heir. Rhaenyra and Daemon have been living on Dragonstone, and they have two more sons named Aegon and Viserys. And this will totally not get confusing having two Aegons running around. But then Corlys is injured in a battle against the Triarchy, and then his brother Vaemond makes the claim for Driftmark. Now, in theory, Luke is supposed to inherit Driftmark, but Vaemond basically calls him a bastard out in the open, and he gets away with it only because the Greens pretty much ruled the kingdom since Viserys looks like this now.
What the heck happened to him?
Well, apparently this was a version of leprosy. He was cut many times by the Iron Throne, symbolizing how he was unfit to rule. But I'm pretty sure that all the family drama aged him up by like 50 years. So now we get a family dispute on who inherits Driftmark. After Rhaenyra reminds her dad about Aegon's dream, he gets out of bed and once again takes her side. Vaemond talks too much,
Bastards!
so Daemon shuts him up.
He can keep his tongue.
I should also mention that Rhaenyra and Rhaenys form an alliance and arrange the marriage of her strong boys and Daemon's daughters. After that, the family has a really beautiful moment, with Viserys begging the people he loves the most to make peace as a dying man's final wish. And later that night, Viserys dies. But right before his death, he talks about Aegon's dream. But Viserys is drugged and he believes he's talking to Rhaenyra. And Alicent fails to ask which Aegon he's talking about. Her Aegon, or Rhaenyra's Aegon, or original Aegon? Is it Jon Snow, or the new bald Aegon?
Peter!
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Did you mean
that? Peter.
we're all called Peter then, Peter?
But Alicent believes that Viserys changed his mind and his final wish was to put her Aegon on the throne. Aegon is crowned king, but Rhaenys crashes the coronation. However, she doesn't want to kill the Greens, but she was fine with killing all these regular people.
Bullshit, you're a fucking hypocrite.
Rhaenys warns Rhaenyra about her father's death and the Greens stealing the throne, and the shock sends her into a miscarriage. In Rhaenyra's darkest hour, Daemon crowns her queen, and then the Black Council is formed. Rhaenyra and Daemon start fighting over how to use their weapons of mass destruction. Rhaenyra is against using the dragons because she knows that once the dragons start dancing, everything burns, and she needs to unite the kingdom against the White Walkers.
I wouldn't worry about it.
Daemon doesn't take it well, and he awakens Vermithor, one of the biggest dragons in the show. Also, Corlys recovers and his fleet blockades the Gullet, which cuts off all supplies to King's Landing. Rhaenyra then sends Jace and Luke to gain the support of her biggest allies, but Luke discovers that the Baratheons betrayed them and joined the Greens. Luke is then chased by Aemond, and in a moment of rage, Vhagar kills Luke and his dragon. So, the Dance of Dragons begins.
The dragons dance, and men are like dust under their feet.
Why is that a dance?
And guys, don't forget, we have Game of Thrones parody merch at our merch store, like this brand new Duncan Egg shirt, which is one of my favorites. We also have our best sellers from previous seasons, like Team Green and Team Black tees, My Little Squire, Sir Pounce on the Iron Throne, Cersei's Wine Mixer, and this badass Hammer and Fury shirt to commemorate our favorite Dragon Seed, Hugh Hammer. Remember, orders over $100 get free shipping, and store members get 15% off site-wide. Links for those are below. And this brings us to Season 2. Jace, who doesn't know about his brother's death yet, flies to the north. He secures the support of Lady Jane Arryn of the Vale, and he meets with Cregan Stark, Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North. Cregan shows Jace the wall, and he agrees to send the Greybeards. These are badass Northmen to fight in the war. While Rhaenyra mourns Luke's death, the Greens prepare for war. But Alicent is the only one who's urging diplomacy. Now, while Aegon is the king, Aemond is the one who's really calling the shots. When the grieving Rhaenyra returns, she's only got one thing to say.
I want Aemond Targaryen.
So, Daemon makes a deal with Mysaria to sneak into King's Landing.
Wait a minute, who's she?
Okay, I didn't mention her sooner because she's way more important for Season 2. Years ago, Mysaria dated Daemon, but over the years, she built a network of spies in the city.
My little birds are everywhere.
Her main goal is to protect the small folk of King's Landing after she herself was abused by evil men, even by her own father. And what is really interesting is that she's kind of responsible for this war.
Why? What did she do?
Well, it was her spy who told Otto Hightower about Rhaenyra and Daemon, and this started a chain of events that eventually led to this war. So Larys tried to purge her spy network, and she barely survived. So Daemon puts his murder hoodie on, and with Mysarea's help, he sneaks into the city. It's also important to remember that the Gold Cloaks are very loyal to Daemon because, back in the day, he used to be their leader, and he recruits Blood and Cheese to kill Aemon. But when they can't find him, they go for Daemon's plan B to kill Aegon's son, Jaehaerys. Helaena escapes with her daughter, Jaehaera, so as far as we know, they don't have any other male heirs. Also, Helaena can see the future.
You will have a dragon one day.
You'll have to close an eye. There is a beast beneath the boards. I'm afraid. The rats.
So when Rhaenyra discovers what Daemon did, they have a massive fight. Rhaenyra cannot trust Daemon because he undermines her constantly, so he leaves and flies to Harrenhal. And Harrenhal is the key to winning the war. But why? You see, Harrenhal is located in the Riverlands, and it's strategically positioned right at the center of Westeros. It's also the biggest castle and capable of housing a massive army. So in theory, whoever controls Harrenhal wins the war. But I think it will make more sense to talk about Daemon's arc in Harrenhal separately just a little bit later, because it's really weird. So after Jaehaerys is murdered, all hell breaks loose in King's Landing, and Aegon hangs every rat catcher in the city because Cheese was a rat catcher. Otto is furious over Aegon's actions, feeling that this will turn the people against them. But Aegon is being manipulated by Larys, who drives a wedge between the king and his hand. So Aegon fires his grandpa and names Criston as his new hand. I should also mention that Criston Cole got promoted to Lord Commander of the Knights Guard after he got away with another freaking murder.
Better call Saul.
But Criston is actually losing it. He and Alicent are having a forbidden affair, and he knows that he's breaking all of his vows.
And the no true knight among you!
Criston is so insecure about his sins that he commands another knight, Eric Cargill, to assassinate Rhaenyra. So Eric sneaks into Dragonstone and he almost gets to Rhaenyra, but Mysaria recognizes him and she warns his brother, Eric, who serves Rhaenyra. The twins duel to the death and both die. Now, during all this, Rhaenyra is arguing with her council a lot. Many of them see her as a weak ruler because she's a woman, especially Bartimos Celtigar and Alfred Brune.
What would you have me do?
The men on both councils push for war and dragons, while Rhaenyra and Alicent urge for diplomacy and peace. So Rhaenyra returns to Mysaria for help, and she sort of becomes the only person she trusts. So with Mysaria's help, Rhaenyra sneaks into King's Landing and meets Alicent in secret, trying to make peace. And Alicent gets an egg on her face when realizing that Viserys wasn't talking about her Aegon.
Well, obviously there was a miscommunication. Obviously.
But she refuses to make peace. So Criston marches an army and he's joined by Alicent's brother, Gawain Hightower. Criston attacks houses loyal to Rhaenyra, including Rook's Nest. Rhaenyra wants to fly there herself, but everyone tells her that she can't. So Rhaenys volunteers, and this is exactly what Aemon and Criston wanted. They plan to lure Rhaenyra's dragons into battle because Aemon is waiting with Vhagar.
It's a trap!
But then Aegon shows up to fight Rhaenys, and this was not part of the plan.
So why is he there?
Well, you see, earlier, Aemond reveals that he and Criston are making plans behind Aegon's back, and Aemond roasts his brother in front of everyone.
Nuke Goston Bevidus Segiton Bilivazni.
Also, Aegon catches his brother cuddling with an old brothel lady, so he's got some serious mommy issues. And then Alicent basically tells Aegon that he's her least favorite son. And this makes Aegon ride into battle. It goes horribly wrong because Meleys is way bigger than Sunfire. But then Sky Godzilla shows up. Aemond wants to be king and he hates his brother, so he figures to burn two stones with one Vhagar. Rhaenys barely survives and she knows that Meleys is no match for Vhagar, but she decides to fight till her last breath. But then Vhagar attacks out of nowhere. Sunfire is also supposedly dead, but Aegon survived, barely. So Aegon is severely burned and the Green Council must decide who rules as regent. Alicent expects everyone to vote for her, so she's shocked that they choose Aemond over her. Like, lady, what did you expect? This whole war was built on sexism. Alicent confronts Aemond and she realizes that her son is actually a monster, and that she failed all of her kids and this war is all her fault. Even her brother tells her that Daeron, her youngest son, is better off because he's living away from his toxic family.
He's kind.
Aegon slowly recovers and Larys earns his trust because he's the only one who shows him any kindness. And Larys tells him that it's only a matter of time until Aemond kills him. Criston marches his army to Harrenhal. Gawain wants to kill him for sleeping with Alicent and Criston is prepared to die. He's horrified by the devastation left by the dragons. Meanwhile, in Dragonstone, Rhaenyra keeps fighting with her council and even with Jace. And despite losing Meleys, she won't make up with Daemon.
It is my fault I think that you have forgotten to fear me.
Jace wants to prove himself to be the man of the house, but Rhaenyra refused to put Jace in harm's way since she sent Luke to deliver a message and he died, and she cannot lose another son. Also, Rhaenyra names Corlys as her hand, but he's never around because he spends most of the season on the dock repairing his ships, really slowly. And this is also where we meet his sons, but we'll get to them in a second. So, after his wife's death, Corlys gets a pep talk from his granddaughter, Baela, and this convinces him that she should be his new heir for Driftmark.
I am blood and fire. Driftmark must pass to salt and sea.
Baela also gives some advice to Jace, who makes an alliance with the Freys. And if you remember from Game of Thrones, the Freys control the Twins, the very important bridge that allows easy passage from the north to the Riverlands.
The Freys have held the crossing for 600 years, and for 600 years they have never failed to exact their toll.
And later, Jace gives his mom the idea of finding new dragon riders because they have 3 unclaimed dragons. They do a test run with a knight who might have Targaryen blood, but Seasmoke clearly has a type. Meanwhile, in King's Landing, the small folk are suffering and starving. You see, the Valerion fleet blockaded the Gullet, which cuts off all supplies to King's Landing. But Aemond shuts the gates, trapping the small folk inside the city, using them as hostages against Rhaenyra's dragons. So Mysaria and Rhaenyra hunch a plan to incite the small folk against the Greens. This triggers a massive riot, and the angry mob even attacks Alicent and Helaena. This is where we meet Hugh, but a lot more on him in a second. Now, Rhaenyra really likes Mysaria because she's the only one who doesn't undermine her or doesn't make her feel useless, so Rhaenyra kisses her. But sexy time is over because Seasmoke has a new rider. So let's talk about the new dragon riders. Since Aegon the Conqueror, every dragon rider was a member of the royal family, but in secret, many Targaryens had bastards. A few of them are able to claim dragons, and these are called dragon seeds. Alan and Adam of Hall are the illegitimate sons of Corlys, but he's too ashamed to admit it. He's too obsessed with his legacy and his family name. Alan is one of the best and most loyal soldiers in the Valerion fleet, and he saved his life. He also needs to shave his head to hide his silver hair. His younger brother, Adam, resents Corlys because he acts like he doesn't exist.
When's Daddy coming home, you know? Who needs him?
Seasmoke kinda stalks him, but when they try to saddle with this guy, Seasmoke claims Adam as his new rider.
Congratulations. You are being rescued. Please do not resist.
And remember, Seasmoke used to be Laenor's dragon, who is Adam's half-brother.
Wait, how come he can be a dragon rider? He's not a Targaryen.
No, but the Targaryens and the Valerions were crossbreeding for generations. In fact, Aegon the Conqueror's mother was from House Valerion. And we actually have a video coming up that explains all of the dragons and their sizes and everything else. In that video, we also explain how Adam can claim Seasmoke while Laenor is actually still alive. So, Adam swears to serve Rhaenyra, and this is a sign that other bastards could ride the other dragons. So, with Mysaria's help, Rhaenyra brings a bunch of bastards to Dragonstone. But once again, everybody is angry with Rhaenyra.
These guys are so negative.
Well, they don't think that lowborns should be dragon riders, and Jace finally confronts Rhaenyra about his real father, and he fears that these new dragon riders will undermine his own claim to the throne. So, the dragon seeds arrive, and the two main ones are Hugh and Ulf. Hugh the Hammer is a blacksmith from King's Landing, and during the siege, his daughter died because she was very sick and the Greens did nothing to help. His wife left for a town called Tumbleton, which is in the Reach, and it's going to be very important for next season. But Hugh is also the grandson of Old King Jaehaerys, and he's the bastard son of Sarah Targaryen, the Old King's rebellious daughter. Jaehaerys disowned Sarah after a scandal in her youth, forcing her to be a silent sister. She ran away and started working in pleasure houses just to get back at her dad, and that is how Hugh was born. Then there's Ulf, who spends most of his time in a tavern bragging about the possibility of being Baelor's son, who is the father of Daemon and Viserys. So Ulf is actually Daemon's half-brother.
Uncle to the one true queen, Rhaenyra Targaryen.
So their lineage gives them some claim to the Iron Throne. Rhaenyra summons Vermithor, the biggest living dragon, who is second only to Vhagar. And then the red sowing begins.
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
Vermithor kills pretty much everyone, but Thorgarion stands his ground and the dragon chooses him as a rider. Which is fitting since Vermithor's previous rider was Hugh's grandfather, who had forsaken his own daughter, Hugh's mother. And Ulf sort of stumbles his way into Silverwing, and she's like, fine, you'll do. So Ulf takes Silverwing on a joyride around King's Landing, and I guess the Greens kind of forgot about their defenses. Aemon chases them to Dragonstone, but then he runs away after seeing all of Rhaenyra's new dragons. So Aemon goes full Mad King and burns Sharppoint, which is a port city loyal to the Blacks. With her new riders, Rhaenyra is planning to finally use her dragons in the war.
The strongholds of the usurper and their armies all must be subdued.
You wish for us to kill innocents?
And so many.
The other riders are unsure about this new strategy, and Ulf lets his new position go to his head, like, immediately.
A knight
will comport himself with grace at the Queen's table.
Best make me a knight then.
But then Rhaenyra is informed that Daemon raised a massive army in Harrenhal, and there might actually be a little bit of treachery going on. So let's talk about everything that happens to Daemon in this season and what's the deal with all of his visions. After his fight with Rhaenyra, Daemon flies to Harrenhal and easily takes the city. Harrenhal is under the control of House Strong, and Simon Strong, the MVP, agrees to switch sides and serve him.
Oh dear.
Which is a massive fumble by the Greens because remember, Harrenhal is the key to winning the war. And things get really weird for Daemon. He's haunted by these strange visions. Sometimes he sees the young Rhaenyra, other times it's Viserys, Laena, and the creepiest one of them all is his mom in bed with him. These visions are also directly connected to the mysterious Alice Rivers. She might be a witch, and she knows what's happening to Daemon, even his deepest secrets. Her magic is tied to the weirwood trees. These trees are connected to the magic of the old gods and the children of the forest, and of course to the three-eyed raven. The castle is also cursed. It was burned by Aegon essentially the day it was completed, and something terrible happens to pretty much every lord who ever ruled Harrenhal. The curse started when Harrenhal was built, and the weirwood trees were cut down and used as lumber. Daemon also sees a green man, and they are the mysterious magical people who protect the Isle of Faces. This is an island with a supernatural presence, and it's located in the God's Eye Lake next to Harrenhal. This place might also come up in Season 3. So there's a lot of old magic happening here.
You better start believing in ghost stories, Miss Turner. You're in one.
So while Daemon is tripping his Dragon Balls in the Haunted Mansion, he must unite the Riverland houses to build an army. He gets right in the middle of a conflict between the Blackwoods and the Brackens. These two houses have been stuck in a cycle of war for ages. The Blackwoods are with the Blacks and the Brackens are with the Greens. And the Brackens are kind of badass since they refuse to surrender to Daemon and Caraxes.
I did not think they would be so eager to die.
So, to force them to join him, Daemon sends Willem Blackwood to commit some medieval war crimes. But this backfires horribly since all the Riverland houses turn against him. And Daemon can't do anything without the say-so of the Lord of the Riverlands, and that is Lord Tully, but he's super old. So Daemon wants to run away from this cursed place, but Alice convinces him to stay. And a few days later, the old lord dies, and it's pretty clear that Alice had something to do with it. So the new lord is Oscar Tully. Since he's so young, Daemon thinks he can bully him around, but he didn't realize that he's actually talking to the GOAT.
I see no reason to cast aside loyalty, no matter how loathsome I may find her representative, the prince.
And Oscar makes Daemon look like a total bitch. Daemon is forced to execute Willem Blackwood for his crimes, but at least he gets his army. And after that, Alfred Broom arrives. This is the guy who kept arguing with Rhaenyra, and he tries to convince Daemon to betray her. And Daemon already has plans to steal the throne from her.
What would you call the husband of the Queen?
Well, the king.
There it is then.
Consort.
That last bit seems unnecessary, don't you think?
Later that night, Alice takes Daemon to the weirwood tree, and here we finally realize the point of all these visions. So, these visions represent his obsession with the crown and the heinous things he did to obtain it, only to fail time after time.
If you walk, then you will find me, time after time.
You good?
Yeah.
And it sort of becomes like this supernatural therapy session for Daemon, to realize that maybe his purpose isn't to steal the throne from his wife, but instead it's something else. And Alice is there to guide him to this destiny.
Do you wish then to learn what is given to you?
And then Alice tells Daemon to touch the tree, and he gets a bunch of visions. He sees the three-eyed raven with the tree roots connected to him. And remember, Bran Stark and the three-eyed raven could also see the past and future through the magic of the weirwood trees. They could even change the past.
Father!
The vision then shows him the White Walkers and then a field of dead dragons. Daemon sees himself drawing, and then the vision shows him Daenerys Targaryen and the birth of her dragons. And finally, he sees Rhaenyra sitting on the Iron Throne. Everything turns to black, and suddenly Helaena is there, and she says,
"It's all a story, and you're but one part in it. You know your part."
So somehow her dragon magic is connected to all of this. And then Aemon tries to convince Helaena to come burn people with him. But Helaena knows what he did to Aegon because she saw it. And then she sort of gives him a prophecy of his future.
You were swallowed up in the God's Eye, and you were never seen again.
Spoilers. Hey, it's a vision. Who knows what's going to happen?
Always emotion is the future.
And after all this, Rhaenyra arrives in Harrenhal expecting treachery. But Daemon is now a true believer, and he finally acknowledges her as his queen. 3 decades earlier, the council in Harrenhal rejected Rhaenys and chose a man. But now, all of these hardened men bend a knee for their queen. But then Alicent changes all the rules. She is depressed and ashamed, and she decides that the best way to end the war is to make a deal with Rhaenyra. She reveals that Aemond and Vhagar are about to fly to Harrenhal to join Kristen's army. So she's going to open the gates to King's Landing and let Rhaenyra take the city. But Rhaenyra says that she must give her Aegon.
I must put an end to the opposition. I must take Aegon's head.
And Alicent agrees to let her son die.
Oh, don't give me that look. I happen to be a more caring mother than most.
Where's my bed?
I put it in storage.
Also, Alicent kind of just wants to run away with Rhaenyra, but it's too late for that. But Aegon is no longer in King's Landing. Larys takes him into hiding away from his evil brother. And remember, Larys built a network of spies and assassins.
I have friends everywhere.
Oh, and also, Otto is in a cage somewhere, but we don't know who captured him or why. All of the armies are assembling and marching, and the war is about to finally start, and this time for real.
Okay, so who's fighting who and where?
Alright, let me explain the armies and positions. Daemon assembles a massive army in Harrenhal, most of whom are houses from the Riverlands. And this army is about to get even bigger with the Starks marching south across the Twins. Jane, Aaron, and the Freys are also supposed to send more soldiers, but it's unclear if they actually did. But 3 green armies are also converging on Harrenhal. Jason Lannister and Humphrey Lefford are about to arrive in Harrenhal. Same with Criston Cole and his men. There's also an army of Hightowers marching in the Reach with air support from Daeron Targaryen. In Driftmark, Corlys finally repairs all his ships and he's getting ready to sail to war. And Alan finally tells his father how he really feels.
Now you remember I live. Now you wish suddenly to scatter the crumbs of your favor.
But there's another fleet on the way sailing across the Narrow Sea. Aemon sends Tyland Lannister, Jason's twin brother, to make an alliance with the Triarchy. And remember, Corlys was beefing with these guys for decades. So after some fun and games, Shirako Lohar, the commander of the Triarchy fleet, agrees to join the Greens and break the blockade of the Gullet. On Dragonstone, the Dragon Riders are preparing to join the war. So this is a good point to explain all the dragons and their riders before Season 3, starting with the Blacks. Rhaenyra's dragon is Syrax, Daemon rides Caraxes, Jace got Vermax, Baela has Moondancer, Adam rides Seasmoke, Hugh rides Vermithor, and Ulf has Silverwing, so that is 7 adult dragons. Little Joffrey got Taraxis, but he's too small. And little Aegon has tiny little Stormcloud.
He's so cute, so tiny, I want one.
And on the green side, Aemon rides Vhagar, Helena has Dreamfire, but she refuses to ride into battle, and Daeron has the blue Tessarion. And as far as we know, Aegon Sunfire is dead. So the Greens now only have 2 fighting dragons, but there is another dragon in the show. Rhaena is supposed to sail with Aegon and Viserys to Pentos, where they will be safe from the war. But Rhaena discovers that there is a dragon in the Vale, a wild dragon that hunts sheep. So she goes on a side quest to find this new dragon, and this is Sheepstealer, a wild dragon who has no rider. And guys, that is everything you need to remember before watching House of the Dragon Season 3. Did we miss anything? Let me know in the comments below or in our free-to-join Discord server, or you can subscribe to me on Substack. Big shout-out to Pavel TV.
That was fire. Fire breakdown. But I honestly would love a longer, more in-depth one. Because it's been a while. Nah, these are like too fast. Can I get one that's long? Pause. So far, 50 minutes. Alright, now we're talking. Wait, fuck.
In House of the Dragon, it picks up in the 9th year of King Viserys Targaryen's reign. This is 172 years before the death of the Mad King and the birth of his daughter, who ends up being Daenerys. King Viserys ended up becoming king because King Jaehaerys' sons both died. It resulted in Jaehaerys calling a great council where he would choose an heir to his throne. It came down to 2 choices: Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, who was the king's eldest descendant, and then her younger cousin, who was Prince Viserys. He was the king's eldest male descendant. Viserys ended up getting it because of that fact. He's a male. Now, he sits in King's Landing, reigning over the 7 kingdoms with his wife and his daughter Rhaenyra. And his wife is pregnant, who he hopes is with a son. Rhaenyra has dreams of being a knight who rides in a battle, but She keeps being reminded about the fact that her battlefield is going to be giving birth. Rhaenyra ends up coming back from a recent trip where she flies around with one of her dragons, and she has to go attend to her father's meeting. In this meeting, a guy named Lord Corlys, who is married to Rhaenys, warns Viserys of a growing alliance among the free cities. They're calling themselves the Triarchy. They're led by a guy named Kragus Drahar. He calls himself the Crab Feeder, due to his inventive methods of punishing enemies. Even though Corlys urges Viserys to not take this guy lightly, it seems like he's going to take him lightly. The other issue is there's somebody missing from this meeting. It's Viserys' brother, Daemon. Daemon is now in charge of the City Watch, which is kind of a police task force. The Crown has put a lot of money into retraining and re-equipping. They thought they would get an update on the progress of the City Watch, but Daemon's nowhere to be found, and doesn't really seem like Viserys cares too much. The king is more concerned with the tournament that he's holding. He's holding it in the honor of his unborn child, who, once again, he is convinced will be his heir. But it turns out Daemon isn't far from this meeting at all. He's actually sitting on the throne. Rhaenyra is the one who finds him, and he tells her that he heard her father was hosting a tournament in his honor. Because the way he looks at it, if the queen has another daughter, then he is the rightful heir to the throne. And he's pretty convinced that it will be a daughter, which means that this whole tournament is for him. But he actually brought Rhaenyra a gift. It's a necklace made of Valyrian steel. Rhaenyra then has to go and do her studies. She does so with her best friend, Alicent Hightower, whose father's pretty high up on the board. But instead of talking about the lesson that day, they start talking about how Rhaenyra feels about this whole situation. That her father is acting like she doesn't exist. Like the be-all, end-all of this unborn child, and the fact that everything is hinging on him being a boy. To Alicent's surprise, Rhaenyra wants her father to get his son. As long as she can recall, it's all that he ever wanted. The person she's worried for is her mother, because her mother will be blamed if this baby comes out and it doesn't have a Y chromosome. While Rhaenyra is discussing the matter with Alicent, her father is actually getting some medical treatment. He's got a nasty wound on his back, and they don't quite know what it is. They've sent inquiries to the Citadel, but they haven't heard back. Her dad doesn't think it's a big deal. He thinks it's just a cut from the Iron Throne. But it looks nasty. Whatever it is, though, it's refusing to heal. The latest treatment's probably going to end up being cauterization. After meeting with the doctors and the maesters, he heads to go check on his wife, who is in the bath. The pregnancy's been pretty brutal for her so far. She jokes that she wouldn't be surprised if she hatched an actual dragon. After they get off that conversation, she asks, "Have you heard from your brother?" And he says, "No, not since I've named him the commander of the City Watch. But, you know he'll turn up during the tournament. He always does." But just because Viserys hasn't heard from Daemon, doesn't mean Daemon isn't taking this job lightly. In fact, he's busy that night, where he, along with the rest of the City Watch, barge into King's Landing and tear it up. They do so in the name of thievery. He tries to rid the city of criminals while simultaneously gaining respect from the entire town. But he does so in pretty vicious fashion. I'm talking castrations, limbs being chopped off. It's a pretty public showing. They needed a 2-horse cart just to haul away the dismemberments. And Otto Hightower, who seems to be the king's second in command and is Alicent's father, gives the king the update on what happened the previous night once the king wakes up. And you can tell by his tone that Otto thinks that Daemon went way too far with this. He warns the king Daemon cannot act with this kind of unchecked impunity. But as he's saying this, they're walking into the room where Daemon is sitting, so he overhears all of it. It forces a little bit of an uncomfortable conversation with Otto telling Daemon, the City Watch is not to do your bidding. It's an extension of the crown. It starts a disagreement with Daemon saying that he was enforcing the crown's laws, and Otto thinking that he went too far. Daemon feeling like he was just trying to clean up the streets before this tournament kicks off, with a bunch of people coming from all over the place to take part in it and also watch it. Lord Corlys throws his 2 cents into the ring, telling the group that they put Daemon in that role because they thought he could do it, and criminals should fear the City Watch. But somehow Otto spins this into Daemon's relationship. Turns out he's kind of a deadbeat husband. His wife is stuck in Vale, and Daemon hasn't been there in quite a while. Daemon, however, seems to be in a loveless marriage, and he tells Otto, "I know your wife just died, so if you want mine, you can have her." But Otto takes great offense to that, which you can kind of understand why. That line even results in the king telling Daemon to chill out a little bit. He figures that his brother's just trying to provoke Otto. King then turns to Daemon and tells him, "You can enforce my laws, but what happened last night cannot happen again." The next day, the tournament kicks off. The king announces to everybody that his wife has gone into labor, which is great. Should only be a matter of hours before they find out that the king finally has an heir. And just like King Viserys predicted, his brother does in fact show up for the tournament. And he's really good. I mean, Daemon is slaughtering the competition, but he does have some competition. And that of a knight that no one's really familiar with. His name is Criston Cole, and other than the fact he's really good at the games, nobody knows anything. But he definitely has caught the eye of Princess Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra, along with Alicent, though, spent most of the games gossiping. But after another victory from Daemon, he asked for the favor, which is really the support, from Alicent. And the eyes that Daemon is giving his daughter does not sit well with Otto Hightower, but there's nothing really he can do. I mean, giving support is really just throwing a bouquet down. The games continue until finally it's Daemon versus Sir Cole. They start off jousting and Cole gets the best of Daemon. That leads to an all-out sword fight where once again Cole gets the best of Daemon. But instead of killing him, which is pretty much what has happened to everybody else, Cole respects Daemon and makes him yield, which Daemon's not happy about, but it's better than death. When he's all done, Cole comes over and gets Princess Rhaenyra's bouquet of support. But unfortunately for the king, he missed all of this. Viserys was called into the chambers of his wife, who is really having difficulty with the labor. The baby's in breach and it's stuck. Viserys is given the tough task of sacrificing his wife for the hope that the baby can live. He does that because, as he's told, they both are going to end up dying if you don't do this. So unfortunately, he says goodbye to his wife, they cut the baby out, and the good news is Viserys finally gets his heir. It is indeed a boy. The bad news is the baby dies a few hours afterwards. A couple days later, everybody gets together for the funeral. Daemon walks over to Rhaenyra and tells her, "Your father needs you now more than ever." And she says to him, "You know, I wonder if in the few hours that my brother was alive, my father was finally happy." Just like her father, she's mourning too, but it's the loss of her mother. She then walks up to the dragon that she has and commands him to set fire ablaze to the body. After the funeral, the king gets together with his council and they have to discuss the fact that he once again doesn't have an heir. And it's really important that he does have an heir, or at least announces one, just for the stability of the realm. It's getting up there in age and people want to know who they're going to follow. And Corlys brings up the fact that they already know who the heir is. It's going to be Daemon Targaryen. Some people agree with Corlys. Some people are completely opposed to this because they think that Daemon is a tyrant who will be a disaster as king. And the biggest proponent of this is Otto, who points out that you need to look no further than what he did with the 2,000 strong army that we gave him. He pillaged this city. The truth is, Daemon should be far away from here. One of the maesters suggests that they need to come up with a solution because something might happen to the king, and he shoots back, "What do you think's going to happen? My brother's going to murder me for the crown?" Daemon has ambition, but not for the throne. He doesn't have the patience for it. And Otto tells the king, "The gods have yet to make a man that lacks the patience for absolute power." So if it's not Daemon, then the only other option is Rhaenyra. But that's never been done before. Doesn't mean it can't be, but it's just never happened. There's been a precedent that it's always been a man. But as Otto sees it, he'd rather have Rhaenyra as the future than Daemon anywhere near the crown. Corlys brings up the fact that his wife, Rhaenys, should have probably gotten the crown. And also, she has a son, so she already has a built-in heir. But nobody's listening to Corlys on that. It finally gets to a breaking point where the king freaks out. He's grieving, and he doesn't want to listen to any of this anymore. So he walks out. But he was unaware of the fact that his brother listened to the whole conversation. He heard what Otto said about him, and he also heard what Viserys said about him. When the council adjourns, Otto meets up with Alicent and asks how's Rhaenyra doing, and she gives him the update that she's in a pretty tough spot. He then tells his daughter to go visit the king in his chambers, because right now he needs a visitor. And it definitely seems like Otto is offering his daughter up as a sexual distraction. But she does it. She goes to his chambers and doesn't seem like anything happens. It really just seems like she does keep the king company. The next day, though, the king gets a report from Otto that really troubles him. Otto has learned that previous night, Daemon, along with certain officers from the city watch, took over a brothel. And at that brothel, Daemon made a speech where he toasted to the heir for a day. And from the report that Otto got, this was a celebration, not mourning. It enrages Viserys so much that he calls his brother to his throne, and he's no longer talking to his brother. He's talking to a subject. He demands to know if the reports are true, and Daemon says, well, yeah, they are, but we all grieve in our different ways. The king feels completely betrayed by this. He yells at his brother, you have no allies in court but me. I've only ever defended you. And this is how you repay me? But Daemon yells back, you've only ever tried to send me away, whether it be to the Vale or the City Watch. Anywhere but by your side is where you want me. 10 years you've been king and you've never once asked me to be your hand. Daemon then tells the king that he feels like his current hand, who is Otto Hightower, is playing him. He doesn't protect the king. And when the king asks, from what? Daemon says, from yourself. You're weak. And that council of leeches, they know it. They'll prey on you for their own end. This is tough for the king to hear. So then he gives his brother something that's tough to hear. He tells his brother, you're not going to be my heir. You are to return to Runestone and your wife at once. Daemon doesn't have a choice, so he does. But the heir to the throne is going to be Princess Rhaenyra. But before they go through the ceremony where she's officially named the heir, he has to tell her a story that's been passed down for every king. King Aegon had a dream where he foresaw the end of the world for men. What he's describing eventually becomes the Battle of Winterfell. She doesn't quite understand it, but she listens to all of it. She then gets sworn in. And people come from all over to pledge their loyalty to her. We're talking Baratheons, Starks. And as Rhaenyra is getting sworn in, her uncle is returning home at the king's orders. Episode 2 picks up 6 months after the death of the queen and the announcement that Rhaenyra will be the heir. In this time, Daemon has set up shop on Dragonstone. He's taken it over and he's brought his army with him. Other than that, though, no one's really heard from him. As King Viserys is going through court, he gets barged in on by Lord Corlys, who is pissed off. He's now lost 4 ships of the Crab Feeder, and he wants Viserys to do something about it. Otto tells him that he will be reimbursed, but he doesn't want reimbursement because this is just going to continue. And if the shipping lanes close, then he's going to be really screwed. What he asks the king to do is go to the Stepstones, where the Crab Feeder is located, and beat him out by force. But Viserys tells him, I'm not prepared right now to start a war with the Free Cities. And one of the maesters turns to Corlys and reminds him that in 7 kingdoms, no one's ever opened war with the Free Cities. The losses would be too great. And Corlys asks, well then why would the Crab Feeder even fear us? No one really has an answer to that. Eventually, Viserys tells Corlys, I have acted. I've sent envoys to Pentos and Volantis to see if we could find common cause. Ships and men are at the ready, and the Stepstones will be settled in time. And then, out of nowhere, Rhaenyra, who is over in the corner, says, you know, you have dragon riders. You can send us. Corlys loves that idea. But the king doesn't. He tells Rhaenyra it's not that simple. And then she finds herself getting kicked out of this meeting. Mainly at the behest of Otto. She's tasked with going to find a replacement for the Kingsguard. One of the members died, and they have to replace him. Sir Harold Westerling, who seems to be in charge of the Kingsguard, takes Rhaenyra out and shows her the candidates, but she's not impressed with any of them. She finally asks, do any of them have combat experience? And only one does. And it just happens to be Sir Criston Cole. The fact that he has combat experience and the fact that he's not the worst looking guy in the realm gets him the job. Although, when Otto hears Rhaenyra so quickly say, then it's settled, Criston Cole will be joining the Kingsguard, he tells her to pump the brakes a little bit. Some of the other candidates have more of a relationship with the crown. They're important allies, but she doesn't care about any of that. All she cares about is the fact that Criston Cole will actually be able to keep her father safe. But in the 6 months since she's lost her mother, Rhaenyra really hasn't talked to her father all that much. Her father, meanwhile, has continued to talk to Alicent. Alicent has been stopping by every day and just listening to the king, all his problems. And he asks Alicent for advice on what he should do about his daughter, and Alicent tells him that these things take time. When she lost her own mother, she didn't really feel like opening up. But she does suggest that maybe he go to her, not wait for her to come to him. Right after talking with the king, Alicent goes and meets up with Rhaenyra. They head down to pray for their lost mothers, but Rhaenyra starts venting to Alicent about the fact that it hasn't even been a year and already the people around her father are trying to marry him off so that they can replace her as heir. And it's not like she feels any loyalty to her dad because the way she looks at it, her dad didn't choose her. It was more about spurning Daemon. They then sit down and pray for their moms. But as they were praying, the king was having a meeting with Lord Corlys and the queen that never was, Rhaenys. The king explains to Corlys that as king, it's his obligation to avoid war. And Corlys gives him the cold reality of what the outside world might view right now. They view a king who is weak. The queen is dead. A girl has been named the heir to the Iron Throne for the first time ever. The king's brother has been disinherited and in turn claimed the Targaryen seat on Dragonstone unopposed. And now a foreign power has established a colony in the most important shipping lane. Fact is, right now the crown is vulnerable, or at least it's perceived to be vulnerable. So what Corlys suggests to change all this is joining the families and having Viserys marry their 12-year-old daughter who looks more like she's 9. Now on paper, Corlys' daughter Laena is a perfect match. This would unite the two surviving Valyrian houses, and it would allow him to show the realm that the crown's strongest days are ahead of him. The downside of this is she's 12 years old. That doesn't really seem appealing to the king, but he also knows that it's expected of him to take a wife eventually, to continue to try to produce more heirs, strengthen his line, all that. So he agrees to meet with Laena the next day. He then has to go for medical treatment, because he got a nick on his finger from the Iron Throne and now that's festering. So as he has a bunch of maggots try to clean his wound off, he asks a small group what they think about this marriage to Laena. That small group includes Otto and one of the maesters. Otto brings up the fact that she's incredibly young, which the king already knows. The maester, however, says that a match with Laena would go a long way towards signaling unity throughout the realm. When the king brings up the fact that he's worried about what Rhaenyra might think, the maester says, what does it matter? Her mother's passed and you're expected to remarry. Otto, though, tells Viserys that he doesn't envy him, because he knows what it's like to lose a wife. And to be forced to remarry and replace her because of duty, that's gotta suck. But the next day, as agreed upon, Viserys goes and he meets with Laena. And this is gonna surprise you, but they don't really have a lot in common. All she wants to talk about is this lost dragon that they can't seem to find. And Viserys does his best to give her an update on where they think this dragon might be. But as they walk the grounds and Laena tells Viserys what her father told her to regurgitate, her mother, Rhaenys, and his daughter, Rhaenyra, are watching it, and they're both pretty disgusted. They end up having a conversation about how none of this really sits well with them, but they don't have a choice. It's just the way that it is. Rhaenys tries to give Rhaenyra some advice. After what happened with her, she feels like it's her duty. She doesn't want to get Rhaenyra's hopes too high that she will eventually be queen one day, because the reality is, her dad is going to remarry. He is going to have kids, and the odds are one of those kids will be a son, and when that happens, she's going to be pushed aside, just like what happened to her way back when. Rhaenyra, however, takes it as jealousy, because Rhaenyra is getting the chance that Rhaenys never got. But Rhaenys tells her, look, the hard truth is, these guys are never going to let a woman command the realm. Just not going to happen. Later in the day, Viserys gets together with arguably his most trusted advisor, Alicent. He starts telling her about the predicament that he finds himself in, and she does her best to just listen, like she's been doing for the last 6 months at the behest of her father. And in that 6 months, she's made a lot of headway. While it doesn't seem like anything physical is taking place, the king has really taken a liking to her. He finds Alicent extremely easy to talk to. But as he's having a conversation with her, her father, Otto, comes in, and he tells her that he's convened a small council for an emergency session. The king has to come to it immediately. So the king gets up to attend this session, where he's told that his brother Daemon has stolen a dragon egg. The dragon keeper then hands over a note that was left by Daemon. In the note, it says that Daemon is remarrying to a woman named Lady Mysaria. She's also pregnant, and as is customary, a dragon egg will be placed in the baby's cradle. Daemon is getting married in 2 days, and he has invited the king. But it doesn't seem to be a real invitation. The king doesn't really care about it until he finds out that that dragon egg was the one that was sitting in his baby's cradle. The same baby that died. Viserys gets up and he wants vengeance, but Otto stops him and says, you shouldn't go. Let me handle this. So he agrees to it. He's going to send Otto along with an army. Otto gets ready to leave and he goes to say goodbye to Alicent. He does notice, though, that she has some self-mutilation habits. She picks at her fingers constantly. He might be concerned about the fact that the king might not be into bloody fingers, because right before he leaves, he asks Alicent, are you going to sing the king tonight? And she says, yeah, if you want me to. And he absolutely does. He then heads off to Dragonstone, and he is greeted by Daemon, and who is to be Daemon's new wife. He doesn't know her, but Otto starts calling her things like a whore, and then telling him that he has to get off of Dragonstone, abandon it completely, get rid of his army, and give back the dragon egg. This turns into a complete pissing contest between the two men, one that even Sir Criston gets involved with. But eventually this pissing contest almost results in the two groups fighting. They pull out their swords and they're ready to go to battle until Otto and his group notice that Daemon has a full-on dragon ready to attack. They can't compete with that. That is until Rhaenyra flies in on her dragon. She, however, doesn't want to get into a fight. She just wants to talk. She parks her dragon and walks up to her uncle, and she tells him that he has to go. He's pissed off the king. And when Daemon says, "I'm not sure how, I'm just getting married," she points out, "You already have a wife." To which Daemon says, "Yeah, but not by my choosing." She then gets down to what she feels is the real root of Daemon's problem. He's jealous. So she tells him, "I'm right in front of you. Go ahead, kill me. If you kill me, you're the heir to the throne." But Daemon isn't about to kill Rhaenyra, throwing the dragon egg at her and walking off. With the dragon egg safely in their custody, Rhaenyra, Otto, and the group go back to King's Landing. But the thing is, Daemon and Lady Mysaria aren't getting married, and she's not with child. Daemon lied in that report, and it really pisses off Mysaria. She tells him, "You can afford to play these stupid games with the king, but I can't. I didn't come here for gold or power. I came here to be liberated from fear." So now his wife doesn't like him, and neither does his mistress. Back on King's Landing, though, the group hasn't arrived yet when the king needs somebody else's thoughts on this whole marriage situation. So he goes to one of his trusted advisors, a guy named Lord Lionel. He asks Lionel's feelings on the situation, and Lionel realizes just how young Corlys' daughter is, but he also realizes that Corlys is going to be pissed off if the king doesn't marry his daughter. And their relationship between House Targaryen and House Velaryon could be incredible. It's one nobody would really want to trifle with. So his advice is to marry her. After all, Corlys makes for a better ally than an enemy. He then gets word, though, that his daughter has arrived back from Dragonstone, and this is the first time he is hearing that Rhaenyra went there, and he is livid. He didn't want her going into that dangerous situation. He starts yelling at her for acting out, but as she puts it, "I didn't think Sir Otto could get the dragon egg back on his own." He understands and he actually agrees with it, but what it comes down to is he can't afford to lose her, not after what happened to his wife. And that's when he finally gets to have an honest-to-God chat with his daughter about the grieving process. They both open up to each other, and it's much needed. He then brings up, though, the fact that he's going to have to marry again. He's not trying to replace her as heir, but the line is pretty vulnerable, and he has to replenish it. While she doesn't seem to be happy about the fact that he's marrying, she tells him, "You're the king, and your first duty is to the realm." But she probably figured that he was going to marry Corlys' daughter. And when he calls the council, he says, "I am going to marry, but it is to Alicent." It's a surprise to most of the room. A huge relief to Otto, who has been planning this for a while. And just as Lord Lionel had predicted, Corlys is pissed. But he's not the only one. Rhaenyra walks out, because it doesn't seem like she was planning for her father to marry her best friend. She had no idea the two even talked. She, however, just went to her room. Corlys went to go visit with Daemon. He calls Daemon to his house on Driftmark, and he starts pitching him on how they could work together. Corlys still has this problem with the Stepstones and the Crab Feeder. He knows that the Crab Feeder is backed by powerful people in the free cities who want to see Westeros weaken. The king doing nothing about any of this has allowed the Crab Feeder to accumulate strength. It's only a matter of time before the shipping lanes fall, and Corlys' house will be crippled. So if Daemon were to do something about the Crab Feeder, it would prove his worth to anybody who doubts it. And what Corlys is selling, Daemon appears to be buying. In episode 3, Daemon got right to work. He started attacking the Crab Feeder, and he, along with Corlys, started a war in the Stepstones. But 3 years later, they're still fighting that war. Every time they attack with a dragon, the Crab Feeder and his men just go into caves, and dragons can't really do anything about it. They're slowly losing the war. But that's what's going on in the Stepstones. Over with King Viserys, things are going great. He and Alicent have had their first child, and it's a boy. His name is Aegon. Alicent is also pregnant with their second child. And as they celebrate the baby's second birthday and get ready for a giant hunt, He gets an update on how bad things are going for his brother and the sea snake, who is Corlys, in the Stepstones, but he's not really concerned about it. He just wants to celebrate his son's birthday. Someone, however, is missing. The heir to the throne, Rhaenyra. Alicent figures that she has an idea of where Rhaenyra is, and sure enough, Rhaenyra is outside just reading. She has no interest in being a part of this party. The relationship between Rhaenyra and Alicent, along with her father, has been strayed ever since he announced that he was going to be married to Alicent. Now that her father has had a boy, it doesn't get any better. She's slowly waiting for the announcement that she has been usurped as heir to the throne. He finally got the boy that he always wanted, so in her mind, it's only a matter of time. Because of that, she's pretty miserable. Alicent, meanwhile, has tried to be a friend to her, but to no avail. She does, however, have to pull rank and force Rhaenyra to come along to the hunt, and she's able to do so because now she is technically the queen. On the way, though, to the hunt, the king brings up the fact that Rhaenyra is of age. She has to get married. But she's just not interested in that. And even though her father reminds her that it is her duty, she still is not interested in it. They arrive at the location of the Great Hunt. The king, Aegon, his wife, Rhaenyra, they all get a standing ovation as the carriage comes in. And really, this hunt is in honor of Aegon, who people have already decided is going to be the heir to the throne. Just like Rhaenyra, they figure it's only a matter of time before the king announces it. The one person who isn't so sure, though, is Otto. He thinks the king is going to be pretty hard-headed with this, so he knows he's going to have to worm his way in and try to convince the king that naming Aegon the heir to the throne is the right move. Whether he thinks it's the right move for the kingdom or just his own family is yet to be determined, probably a little bit of both. But the family gets settled, and they head into a giant tent where a big party is being held. Most of the women, however, in this party are discussing what's going on in the Stepstones and the war with the Free Cities. Recently, somebody named Lady Joanna was abducted, and she's going to be sold into the Free Cities, so the women are kind of gossiping about that. But they're also wondering what the king plans on doing about it. When they ask Rhaenyra her feelings on it, she reminds them that the kingdom isn't at war. And they look at her and say, yeah, we are. Your uncle forced our way into this war. So far, it's kind of like the United States in World War II. They claim to be neutral, but everybody knew that they were a part of the Allies. Many of the people, however, just want the king to send some aid and clear out this triarchy for good. But so far, the king is reluctant to do any of that. Rhaenyra gets tired of the conversation. She heads out of the tent, and she meets a familiar name. It's a Lannister, but it's Jason Lannister. And just like with most Lannisters, he is very arrogant, very cocky, and it turns Rhaenyra off pretty quickly. Especially when he brings up the fact that he has the resources to build a dragon pit. And she's a little confused, and he says, well, I could do it for my queen or my wife. Rhaenyra quickly realized that this whole conversation was set up by her father in an effort to get her to marry this guy. She ends the conversation pretty quickly and storms back into the tent to confront her father about this. It results in a pretty loud public argument between the two where he yells at Rhaenyra that it is her duty to marry. It gets so bad that Otto has to jump in and settle the two down before this public affair gets any more public and more embarrassing for the crown. Rhaenyra gets so annoyed that she leaves the tent, hops on a horse, and takes off. Luckily for her, Sir Criston Cole saw her leave, so he hops on a horse and chases after her. When he's finally able to catch up to her, she starts venting about what just happened to her, the whole Jason Lannister situation. After she's done venting, Criston says, we should probably head back to camp. But she doesn't want to do that. She'd rather just travel around the woods and post up there for a little bit. So, that's what they do. Just wandering and talking. The king, though, gets word that the hunt is going well. There's been a sighting of a white hart. It's a big, giant albino stag. And a white hart is looked at as the king of the king's woods. Otto tries to make the case that this is a sign from the gods. Aegon's birthday, you find the king of the king's woods. Can't be a coincidence, right? But Viserys doesn't put too much stock into it yet. He's still a little bit flustered about the conversation he just had with his daughter. The hunters continue to search for the white stag, and that night, the king starts to drink. A lot. Jason Lannister comes up to him while he sits on his throne, and he presents him with a special spear that he had made for Aegon in his birthday. He hopes that Viserys will use it to kill the White Hart. He then makes his pitch to Viserys about why he should be able to marry Rhaenyra. And one of the reasons he brings up is the fact that he will make a really good home for her and be a sort of consolation prize for not getting the throne. But this really pisses Viserys off. The fact that it's just assumed that Aegon will usurp his daughter, who he already named to be the heir. He sets Jason straight right away. Rhaenyra will continue to be the heir, despite the fact that he has recently had a son. And this decision wasn't made on a whim. Jason Lannister just leaves, and then Otto comes up. He gives him an update on the White Hart, and then he reminds Viserys that Rhaenyra is not only his daughter, but he is the king, and she will do as he commands. But he's not interested in commanding her to marry somebody. That's not what he came for. He wants his daughter to be happy. So Otto proposes something that he thinks Viserys might be more comfortable with. Incest. That's right. He proposes that Rhaenyra marry Prince Aegon. I mean, he is only her half-brother after all. King kind of looks at Otto like he's nuts. Not because of the old incest part, but because Aegon just turned 2 years old. Otto points out, though, that if the king were to do this, it would cease the endless proposals for Rhaenyra that the king's been besieged with. The king, though, laughs it off and reminds Otto, I came here to hunt, not to deal with this crap. The king is clearly getting tired of it. But that wine is some good. And the king continues to drink, forgetting about his problems. So, when Lord Lionel comes up to him, the king is pretty drunk. Lord Lionel, though, comes up to him and gives him an update on where Rhaenyra is. The king starts beating himself up over the fact that he can't even command his own daughter, and Lionel reminds him of a previous king who held peace throughout the realm but was driven crazy by his daughter, so don't be too hard on yourself. He then asks the king, do you want my opinion on this? And the king really doesn't, but Lionel's going to give it to him anyway. He tells the king that the person that Rhaenyra should marry is the son of Rhaenys and Corlys, Sir Laenor. He gives him the exact same reason on why he thought that the king should have married Laenor's sister 3 years ago. But Laenor is currently fighting in the Stepstone, so he has to survive that first. The king doesn't really say anything. He just gets up and leaves. He goes and stands outside staring at the fire when Alicent comes up. And he tells Alicent that this whole Rhaenyra issue is really eating at him. The fact is, he named Rhaenyra the heir to the throne because he accepted the fact he was never going to have a son. He had a dream that he would have a son, and he feels like it drove him to try, which resulted in the death of his first wife. He never thought he would remarry, and yet here he is, with a new wife and a new son. He thought by naming Rhaenyra the heir to the crown, it would stop all of that. But then everything changed. So now he's wondering, what if he was wrong about naming Rhaenyra the heir? And just like she's done for the past 3 years, Alicent doesn't give much insight, she just listens. The next morning, though, they get an update on the White Stag. They've caught it, or at least they thought. When the king arrives to kill the stag, turns out it's not the White Hart. It is a giant stag, but it's just not the one that they were searching for. Doesn't matter, though. It's got to die. So Jason hands over the spear, the king goes up, and he kills it. But Viserys wasn't the only Targaryen to get a kill. Viserys and company head back to camp, and they're eating when all of a sudden the alarms go off. Not the alarms for a kill or the alarms for attack, but the bad bitch alarms. Because Rhaenyra returns with Criston, and there is a wild boar being dragged on a cart behind them. The previous night, they were attacked. Criston injured it, and Rhaenyra ended up bludgeoning it. So when she returns to camp, she is covered in blood, and all eyes are on her. But she doesn't say a word. She just walks right by the king and into her tent. The next day, everybody returns back to King's Landing. Before she goes to bed, Otto goes to visit his daughter. All efforts to try to get Viserys to, quote, see the light and name Aegon the heir to the throne haven't worked so far. So he's got to go through his daughter to get this done. He starts pitching Alicent on the fact that this is the right move. Not only for the realm, but for her. She should want her son to be king. But she reminds her father, everybody vowed their loyalty to Rhaenyra, including us. He tells her, though, that that's all well and good, but that was before Aegon showed up. And no one is ever going to follow a woman. It's just not going to happen. The realm would be in shambles if Rhaenyra took the throne over Aegon. He instructs her to guide Viserys towards this reasoning. So that night, she goes and visits her husband, who is very hungover. They start off the conversation about Rhaenyra and how she has to marry. Alicent's advice, though, is that Rhaenyra has to believe it's her choice to marry. She can't be forced into it. She's too hard-headed. She then notices that there's a letter to the king on the table, and it's from Vaemon Velaryon. He's Lord Corlys's brother. He's begging for help. The king, though, doesn't want to send aid. He looks at this war as it started by two malcontents who were unhappy with the decisions that he made. So what message would it send if he bailed them out? But she poses the question, is it better for the realm if the crab feeder thrives or is vanquished? And deep down, Viserys knows that the answer is vanquished. So the next morning, he gives the aid that Vaemon had asked for. He gives a letter to a soldier and says, this is for Daemon and Daemon's eyes only. And the letter just says, hey, I know it's been a little while. I know we've had our differences, but I don't want to see you perish in this battle. So I'm giving you the aid to win this war. And every day I'll pray for your safety. As he's handing off the letter, Rhaenyra comes into the room, and he gives her an update on what the letter said, why he's sending it. And then they get into their issues. She finally comes clean on the fact that she, along with just about everybody else, is waiting for the announcement that Aegon is going to be king. That's one of the reasons why all this marriage talk has really turned her off. She feels like she's being used as a pawn, something that can get the kingdom something in return. They start arguing about how that is literally how it's done. You marry for advantage. With Rhaenyra screaming, well, if it was for advantage, you would have married Laena Velaryon, but you didn't. And that's a point that the king can't even argue with. The king then takes his wife's advice, telling Rhaenyra, you're good to marry, but you can do it on your terms. Go out and find somebody you're comfortable with. It puts Rhaenyra's mind at ease right away. But as she's leaving, he gives her some more good news. He admits that he wavered on the issue of the heir to the throne after Aegon was born. But he swears on her mother that she is the heir to the Iron Throne. Now, over at the Stepstones, things are not going well. Corlys, Daemon, and that group are losing this war. It's so bad that Vaemond is kind of hinting at a mutiny against Daemon. Laenor Velaryon actually does have a plan, though. He proposes that somebody go down to the caves and bait the crab feeder along with his army to coming out of it. But Vaemond brings up that nobody is crazy enough to do that, and Laenor brings up, well, Daemon is. Daemon returns at the tail end of this conversation. That's when Viserys' man comes up and gives him the note. Instead of being relieved, though, Daemon is infuriated, so much so that he beats the crap out of the messenger. He's not going to let his brother bail him out. So even though it's crazy, he enacts Laenor's plan. He plays straight up hero ball, going down to the cave and waving a white flag. Just as he's about to sacrifice himself, he starts attacking, though. He starts running through arrows, killing a bunch of the crab feeder's men until finally he is hit. I mean, it took a while. These are the worst archers in the land. They straight up suck. But right as the crab feeder's men have Daemon surrounded, that's when Laenor flies in with the dragon and starts attacking everybody. The dragon, along with the gold cloaks and the sea snake's men, they finally win the war. Daemon heads into the cave and kills the crab feeder, bringing his body out and having him live up to the name because he feeds the crab feeder's body to crabs. He does all of this before Viserys' men can even arrive. In episode 4, Rhaenyra travels away to host a bunch of guys that have called for her hand in marriage. It's basically a medieval bachelor. The problem is she's not handing out any roses. None of the guys really do it for her. They're either too old or too young. She finally gets up and calls it, leaving early. This after a 9-year-old seemed to have killed a guy who insulted him. In fairness to the 9-year-old, the guy was being a dick. As she's traveling back to King's Landing, all of a sudden a dragon comes out of the sky and she recognizes it. It's Daemon's dragon. And Daemon's dragon is heading for King's Landing as well. So that means that she won't be the only person arriving back. Daemon, who is finally returning to King's Landing after 4 years, walks back in wearing a crown. Viserys asks him, why do you come in here wearing a crown? And Daemon explains that after he defeated the crab feeder, the Triarchy named him the King of the Sea. But he realizes that there's only one true king. And the Stepstones now belong back to the realm. He then bends the knee, sign of respect to Viserys, who finally welcomes his brother back. They then have a mini welcome back party, and you could tell that Viserys is just happy to have his brother back. It completely overshadows Rhaenyra coming back, who, by returning early, likely embarrassed her father. But now with Daemon back, her father doesn't even care. But Rhaenyra is still very much upset by it. She goes and sits down by herself, and she's joined by Alicent. Rhaenyra starts whining about the lack of suitors she had, and how none of them actually want her. They just want her name, her power, and her ability to bear children. And while Rhaenyra is whining about this, she's completely oblivious to the fact that Alicent really didn't have that luxury to pick her own mate. Instead, Alicent has to have sex with Rhaenyra's father, who isn't looking great these days. Alicent, though, does tell Rhaenyra, "I'm glad you're back. Lately, I haven't had many friends. I still look at myself as Lady Alicent, but everybody else looks at me as the Queen. So it's good to have a friendly face." And Rhaenyra looks at her friend and says, I missed you too. So it's not just Daemon and his brother who are building bridges. Eventually, Rhaenyra is able to get her uncle alone. She asks him, "Okay, what are you doing here?" And he tells her that he just missed home. But she doesn't believe that. She knows there's some ulterior motive with Daemon. It's also clear, though, that he's not telling her what it is. They then get into her current situation with her trying to be married off. And just like with Alicent, she starts whining about her predicament. Well, that's when Daemon explains that marriage is just a political arrangement. And after you do get married, you could do whoever you want. Rhaenyra, though, is a little bit skeptical about this. Once the party ends, they finish up their night with Rhaenyra heading to her father's council. Now with the Stepstones freed up, they start talking about what exactly is going to happen with them. And it seems that even though it's been 4 years, Lord Corlys is still upset about the fact that his daughter was passed up for Alicent. Otto then brings up the fact that Corlys is planning on marrying his daughter off to the son of a person known as the Sea Lord. The Sea Lord is a part of the Free Cities, so if this were to happen, House Velaryon is entering into a pact with the Free Cities. This would likely mean that the Crown would have to seek their own marriage pact. And with Rhaenyra sitting right there, she knows what they're talking about. Rhaenyra doesn't say a word at the council meeting, though. And afterwards, she heads off to her bed, says goodnight to Sir Criston Cole, who is manning the door outside. And she has plans on just going to bed, but then she notices that there's a bag full of clothes that she doesn't recognize. And inside that bag, there is a map. The map looks like a map of her bedroom, so she goes and follows and finds out that there is a hidden tunnel from her bedroom leading to outside the gate. She puts on all those dirty clothes and follows the tunnel, and there's Daemon waiting for her. And with this disguise, she not only doesn't look like the princess, she looks like a boy. Daemon then decides to take her around and show her a King's Landing that she's never seen before. A King's Landing at night. They start off with a little bit of a play where she finds out just how unliked the idea of a woman being a ruler is. The performance all has to do with her being named heir to the throne, and she's not really well received. But Daemon didn't convince her out to watch a play. He leads her off to a brothel, and they watch an orgy. All those naked people rubbing up on each other. Rhaenyra gets all kinds of horned up. And that is when she kisses her uncle. He not only kisses her back, he rips off the hat that was concealing her hair. He pulls her pants down. I mean, it looks like they're about to do this thing, and Rhaenyra is fully willing. But then out of nowhere, Daemon pulls back, leaving the brothel. Rhaenyra can't figure out exactly what's going on, and she goes to chase after him, but she can't find him, and eventually she gets so upset that she returns to the castle, walking right through the front door, which is quite a surprise to Criston Cole, who never saw her leave, so he's very confused. But we're talking a horned-up 19-year-old. You gotta let that tension out. So instead of explaining herself to Criston, she invites him in her chambers, and she decides that if she can't have her uncle, this night will do. She loses her virginity, and it seems to be the best 2 minutes of her life. And while it's never explained, it certainly doesn't seem like Criston would really care that he was the second choice. But while she's having consensual sex and enjoying it, her best friend is down the hall being forced to have sex with her father. Because very, very late at night, Lady Alicent was called to the king's chambers, and she just has to lay there and take it. And she's miserable. Now, even though Rhaenyra went out with a disguise, when Daemon pulled her hat off, she was seen by one of Otto Hightower's spies. And the next morning, That spy finds Otto Hightower and tells him exactly what he saw. With no other choice, Otto has to bring it to the king. But instead of believing Otto, the king is in complete denial. Otto doesn't feel real comfortable explaining the full severity of the situation. He tries to pussyfoot around it. But even then, the king is in denial that his brother and his daughter were hooking up the previous night at a brothel. He starts questioning the source, and Otto tells him, the source has never proved me wrong. This whole conversation is being overheard by Alicent, who, unlike the men, wants to get to the bottom of it and isn't willing to pussyfoot around. She calls for a private meeting with Rhaenyra, and she comes right out with it. What did you do last night? At first, Rhaenyra says nothing, but when Alicent explains that her father brought the king some pretty bad rumors this morning regarding her and her uncle, the truth starts to come out, although not fully. Rhaenyra never once admits to hooking up with her uncle, even going so far as to say Daemon never touched her, which, isn't true at all. Even with her story having a ton of holes in it, Alicent chooses to believe her friend. But even though the king doesn't believe it, the allegation is so bad that he has to talk to his brother. He sends his guards to go find Daemon, who is extremely hungover, and he has a private one-on-one where he asks his brother, what did you do? And unlike Rhaenyra, Daemon owns up to it, saying, she's of age, and if she's going to lose it to anybody, it might as well be me. And as you can imagine, the king does not take it well when his brother says that about his daughter. The king yells at Daemon, great, now my daughter is sullied, who's going to touch her? And Daemon says, I will. Marry Rhaenyra to me. This is what our family does. Keeps the tradition alive, and it keeps our bloodline strong. But the king is completely disgusted. This was clearly Daemon's plan all along. To sully Rhaenyra's name and leave the king with really no choice but to marry his daughter off to his brother. He would leverage this to finally get to the crown. Instead of giving in though, Viserys says, go back to the Vale and to the wife that you actually married. Try to restore any scrap of honor that remains. I don't want to see you. The king then returns to his room and he starts talking to Alicent. And Alicent believes her friend. She tells the king, Rhaenyra's never been one to lie, but Daemon, he's never been one to tell the truth. And Viserys asks her, what does he have to gain by lying about this? The fact is, whatever happened, Rhaenyra isn't innocent. So a little while later, he calls a meeting with Rhaenyra. He starts off the meeting by showing her a very familiar dagger. It used to belong to Aegon the Conqueror, who, it's worth mentioning, had multiple wives. But this dagger has been passed down in the family to the next king. When you heat it up, it has a secret inscription. It says, in my blood comes the prince that was promised, and his will be the song of ice and fire. He shows her this and explains that just by knowing about this dagger, that's a way bigger burden than being on the throne. And it's also a way bigger burden than her desires. She right away takes offense to the fact that he hasn't even asked for her side of the story, but he says, Rhaenyra, it doesn't matter. It's all about perception. And I should disinherit you, but I'm not. You will wed Sir Laenor Velaryon, who in reality is way better looking than her uncle. And even though she probably should be happy about this arrangement, she's not. She yells at her father, you're going to marry me off so I can be your remedy for your political headaches? But he yells back, you are my political headache. This wedding will unite the two most powerful houses in the realm. With this wedding, nobody will want to stand against us. And that's when Rhaenyra questions him on that, asking, what about the vulture perched on your throne? Viserys has no idea what she's talking about, and she explains, Otto Hightower. He's had an agenda this whole time. And that agenda is to get Aegon to the throne, not her. At first, Viserys is in denial about this. He thinks it's crazy. Otto Hightower has served 3 kings now. But the more she talks, the more she kind of makes sense. And once Viserys has more time to think about it, he realizes that his daughter is onto something. Late that night, he calls a meeting with Otto. One thing that he can't get over is the fact of Otto's fast rise in the kingdom. In 5 days, he went from just being a guy in the king's council to being the second most powerful guy on the throne, serving over a king, and then another king, and helping Viserys become the king that he is. But it was when Viserys realized that he was played by Otto, and the pawn in the game was Alicent, that's what clinched it for him. In the most difficult time in his life, it was Alicent who helped him get over the death of his wife. And Viserys realizes now that Otto was the hand that moved that pawn there. Otto tries to save face and salvage his name, but doesn't work. Viserys rips the pin off his jacket, and Otto Hightower is no longer the hand of the king. Before he can go to bed, though, there is one final thing that the king has to do. He has one of his maesters cook up a remedy for his daughter. It's basically medieval Plan B, because there is no way that if his daughter is going to marry somebody, she's going to do so knocked up. In episode 5, Rhaenyra and the king head off to go meet with Lord Corlys and his wife and propose the marriage. But as they're sailing off, Otto Hightower is kicking rocks. He's leaving King's Landing. Right before he does so, though, his daughter runs out and starts apologizing for how all of this transpired. But instead of being understanding, he puts all of the blame on her, saying that she trusted Rhaenyra instead of backing him. The trust in Rhaenyra ended up leading to him getting fired. She, however, throws it back on him, saying, no, what got you fired was the fact that you're so desperate to get Aegon to be the heir to the throne. And that's when he tells her that nobody is ever going to follow Rhaenyra. She should prepare Aegon, who's, by the way, all of about 3 years old, to be king. Because once the king does die, and he will die, he's not going to live to be old, he's constantly sick. But once that happens, nobody's actually going to live up to this oath that they swore to Rhaenyra. And Otto's not wrong. The king is always constantly sick. Hell, even on this trip, while everybody else is fine, he gets seasick. But everybody arrives safely, including the new king's hand, Lord Lionel. When they arrive, though, Lord Corlys is not there to greet them, which is taken as a pretty big slight. Lionel starts to make a pretty big stink about it. And while Corlys' children, Laenor and Laena, who is much more grown up than the last time we saw her, try to make excuses for their father, Lord Lionel continues to make a big deal about it until finally the king says, who cares? Let's just get on with this. So the children then bring the king to their father. And the initial greeting between Lord Corlys and Rhaenys is a pretty friendly one. You would think that they're old friends. Corlys ends up telling the king, sorry we couldn't meet on better circumstances, and the king has no idea what he's talking about. And that's when Corlys tells him that Daemon's wife passed away suddenly. It was a hunting accident. She was thrown from her horse and her skull and her neck were crushed. That's the story that everybody got. The reality was Daemon returned to the Vale, saw his wife. His wife started insulting him because, man, they really didn't get along. And Daemon ended up scaring the horse to throw his wife off and then bludgeoning her to death. Of course, nobody knows this. Hell, the king didn't even know that she died in the first place. In fact, he thinks it's weird, but he isn't there for that. He brings up the marriage. Lord Corlys and the king start negotiating. And after a little while, it's settled that all of the kids that are born from this marriage will come out with the last name Velaryon. But if they take up the throne, they will do so with the last name Targaryen. This way, the Targaryen name doesn't die on the throne. While the two men were discussing the terms of this marriage, the two children who were supposed to be married, Laenor and Rhaenyra, walk on the sand. They're very familiar with each other, they grew up with each other, but they don't really want to marry each other. For various reasons. For Laenor, the main reason why he doesn't want to marry Rhaenyra is the fact that he's gay, and she knows it. And she doesn't want to marry Laenor because he's gay, and she knows it. So they come to an understanding. They will go through this marriage. They will bear children, but they'll also be free to sample other fruit from the market, if you will. There's really only one person that isn't a fan of this proposed marriage. It's Rhaenys. She gets Corlys alone and she approaches him about all her concerns that she has. The first is the fact that she is pushing her gay son into a relationship that he's not going to be happy in. And Corlys' response to that is he'll outgrow it. But her main concern is actually a concern that Otto has. Yes, everybody swore an oath to Rhaenyra, but that was before Aegon came around. And once the king dies, is anybody really going to follow that oath? She feels like the answer is probably not. People will challenge for the throne, and when they do so, they'll come not only for Rhaenyra, but her husband and her children as well. They're just not putting their son in a safe situation. Corlys, though, looks at it like she's being a little ridiculous. The two powerful houses connected. Nobody's going to want to touch that. The next day, the Targaryens sail back to King's Landing. And as they're on the ship, Sir Criston Cole approaches Rhaenyra. He's been thinking about the night they had together for a long, long time. And he ends up proposing to her. He wants her to run off, ignore the crown, and marry him. He makes his best pitch to her, but doesn't really go all that well. She has no interest in abandoning the crown. She likes their current setup, friends with benefits. And it's not like he's so much in love with Rhaenyra, it has more to do with the oath that he made. An oath of chastity joining the King's Guard. He broke it when he slept with Rhaenyra. He figured that he could convince himself it was okay if they were married, but now that she's basically telling him that he's nothing more than a boy toy, it doesn't sit well with him. She tries to explain that this whole situation has way more to do with the crown. It's bigger than the both of them. But try telling a man who just broke his chastity oath that. As soon as they arrive back at King's Landing, he is summoned. He thinks it's by Rhaenyra, but it's not. It's by the Queen. While everybody was away, the Queen had been approached by Larys. He is Lord Lionel's son. He's disabled. He's got a really bad foot, which means he can't really do much other than walk around and listen, gossip. At first, they talk about the unfortunate situation that led to his father becoming the Hand. But that leads him to planting a seed in the Queen's mind. He brings up how Rhaenyra is sick. The reason he says that is because one of the maesters brought her a certain kind of tea. It puts the seed of doubt into her. She starts panicking, wondering if she made the wrong move by trusting Rhaenyra, because if she did, it single-handedly led to her father being ousted. So she has to get to the bottom of it. She has to talk to the one man who was standing outside of Rhaenyra's bedroom that night. She sits Criston Cole down, starts explaining why he's there, and it seems like what she's leading to is, did Daemon enter the room? But she doesn't even get that far, because Criston just owns up to it. Yep, it was me. I slept with Rhaenyra. My bad. I made a chastity vow, but there that goes. He begs for forgiveness from the Queen, and actually goes so far as to say, please don't torture me. Give me a merciful death. But she is so in shock, while also simultaneously feeling a little betrayed, that she just lets Criston go. Meanwhile, down the hall, her husband looks like he's on death's door. As soon as he returned from King's Landing, the king fainted. I mean, he looks horrible. So much so that he starts talking to his new hand about what kind of king he'll be remembered as. And Lionel tries to be a good friend by saying, you've got plenty of time, but it doesn't look that way. Although, the next day, when they start the celebration of this marriage, the king does look much better, which is great news. They're going to have a miniature feast where all of the big families from around the realm show up, and then in a week's time, the marriage will go down. One of the people who shows up for the marriage is Gerald Royce, who is Daemon's former cousin-in-law. He was really close to Daemon's wife, and it's pretty clear he is still mourning the loss of her. But as everybody is coming up to greet the king and Rhaenyra, one person who is noticeably missing from the table is Alicent. She hasn't really talked to anybody since she found out the truth between Criston and Rhaenyra. However, the king covers it up by saying she's just getting ready for the party. A short while later, though, everybody arrives and sits down, including Daemon. That was a surprise. Nobody really expected him to show up. But once everybody is seated, the king starts making a toast. He doesn't get very far into it when the door opens up, and Alicent walks through, interrupting it. She's dressed in a beautiful green dress, but where she comes from, Old Town, the color green symbolizes get ready for war. The fact that she interrupted the speech was absolutely planned. She is not happy. And while the king is surprised, the king isn't willing to make a scene about it. Once Alicent sits down, the king continues his speech saying how important this day is, how great it is to unite the two families. And after the small feast that they have today, they will have 7 days of tournaments and other feasts, and by the end of it, there will be a royal wedding. Shortly after the party actually starts, Alicent's uncle walks up to her and lets her know that all of Old Town supports her. He knows that she's going through a difficult time with Otto being ousted from King's Landing. She's all alone. Now she's showing up in a green dress. It's not lost on them. And while Alicent was talking to family, Gerald Royce approached Daemon. He's not happy. He tells him that where he comes from, men should have to pay for their crimes. But Daemon knows that there's nothing that Royce can do. It's not like he has any proof. And he actually tells him, you know what, Gerald, I'm actually happy you showed up. Because me and my wife didn't have any heirs, which means that anything that she was owed comes to me. And she was owned a place called Runestone, which means that Daemon now has claim to it. He tells Gerald, as soon as this wedding is over, I plan to go and claim it. And Gerald was not expecting that. The party continues, though. Everybody seems to be having a good time. But one person who is in attendance is Joffrey, Laenor's boyfriend. And after Laenor explained to Joffrey the terms of he and Rhaenyra's agreement, Joffrey made mention that she must have somebody in mind. So he spent most of the party trying to figure out if that person was in attendance. And that's when he saw the way that Criston was looking at Rhaenyra. He pulls Laenor aside and tells him, it's that guy. And Laenor doesn't really care, but the point that Joffrey makes to him is, if she knows your secrets, it's important that you know hers. A short while later, Joffrey goes up and introduces himself to Criston, who has absolutely no time for him whatsoever. He's in a bad mood, and he's working. But Joffrey starts making mention that they both have a vested interest in this marriage. And basically, that he and Laenor know that there's something going on with Criston and Rhaenyra. And now that everybody knows everybody's secret, it's important that everybody look out for each other and just keep their mouths shut. But the real guy that Joffrey should probably have kept his eye on is Daemon, who walks up to Rhaenyra on a very crowded dance floor and confronts her about the decision she's making to marry Laenor. She ends up repeating a lot of what Daemon had first told her about marriage. The fact that it's political, the fact that it really doesn't matter, and the fact mainly that she doesn't have a choice. She goes so far as to challenge him to take her. She's not married yet. Grab her, kidnap her, and make her his wife. This conversation, though, gets interrupted when there's a scream. And that's because turns out Criston did not enjoy the conversation he had with Joffrey, and he ends up beating the hell out of him. I'm talking about caving the guy's skull in. Really ruins the party atmosphere. As soon as Criston is done, he heads out to the garden. He can't live with the fact that he broke his chastity vow. So he gets ready to commit suicide. But he's stopped by Alicent, who won't let him do it. And the wedding, that gets sped up. Laenor certainly isn't in the right mindset. He's in complete shock over the fact that the love of his life just died. Rhaenyra really isn't into it. And luckily, they don't even get the I-do's out before the king collapses. Possibly for the final time. In episode 6, we get a 10-year time jump. Rhaenyra and Laenor have had 3 sons. Jace, the oldest, Lucerys, and Joffrey, their baby. And as soon as Joffrey is delivered, Rhaenyra gets word that the queen wants to see him. Rhaenyra is so turned off by the fact that she can't even spend time with her newly born baby that she gets up, having just delivered him, and walks him to the queen, bloody and all. She presents the baby to the queen and the king. The king is over the moon. And when the queen asks what the baby's name is, Laenor blurts out, it's Joffrey, not even consulting Rhaenyra, which pisses her off. But there's one thing about baby Joffrey that everybody notices. It's the same thing that they noticed with Jace and the same thing they noticed with Lucerys. It's the fact that he looks nothing like Laenor. In fact, he looks more like the commander of the City Watch, Harwin, who's Lord Lionel's son. And after visiting with the king and the queen, she's able to take baby Joffrey, show his brothers what he looks like, and then show the real father. She gets a little bit of alone time with Harwin to admire their baby, as Laenor escorts both Jace and Lucerys down to dragon training. And the kids do dragon training with their cousins, Aegon, who's Viserys' oldest son, and Aemon, who's his youngest. But Aemon doesn't have his own dragon. He doesn't even have his own dragon egg. And it's something that he's really insecure about. So when Aegon and Jace and Lucerys all say, hey, we found you an egg, Aemon gets pretty excited until he finds out that it's literally just a pig that they taped wings to. He gets pretty upset by this and annoyed, and then he does something that he's been yelled at before to not do. He travels down to the dragon pit, where he sees the power of these beasts, and he gets pretty scared and caught. He gets escorted back up to go see the queen, where the queen is teaching her daughter Helena all about bugs and whatnot. The queen starts reprimanding Aemon because she told him not to go in the dragon pit, and that's when he explains the whole pig thing. Alicent brings this to the king, and he doesn't really think it's that big of a deal. Boys will be boys kind of thing. She also puts most of the blame on Jace and Lucerys, but it's not so much them, it's their mother. And then she brings up the elephant in the room. That Rhaenyra just had her 3rd child with Harwin. All 3 of them bastards. She feels like it's a slap in the face of the crown. Viserys, meanwhile, is acting like he has no idea what she's talking about because he wants to be completely oblivious to all of it. That actually pisses off Alicent even more. The person she confides in once she gets out of this meeting with the king is actually Criston Cole. He switched from watching Rhaenyra 10 years ago to watching Alicent. And it's as if the two are in a pissing contest of who hates Rhaenyra more, as they walk around the kingdom on their high horse of morality. After bitching and moaning to Criston, she goes and talks to Aegon, who she catches in a very interesting situation. He was jerking off in a window over the city. But she approaches him about whose idea was it for the pig. He, just like his father, doesn't think it's that big of a deal. And she tells him it is a big deal. I know you find him annoying, but you have to stick up for your brother because Rhaenyra's children are not going to be your plaything forever. Right now, the way the crown goes, she's going to inherit it, which means that Jace is going to be next in line. Aegon, though, still isn't picking up on why this is a big deal, and Alicent yells, it's because once she takes over the throne, she's going to get rid of everybody that has a claim to it, which means you and your brother, because deep down everybody knows that you should be the heir to the throne. All of a sudden, Alicent sounds a lot like Otto. The next day, the kids get together and they do some training with a sword. They're taught by Criston Cole. This is all observed by the king and his hand. And as they're watching training and watching the kids, somebody else shows up to training. It's Lord Harwin. He starts kind of criticizing Criston's methods on how he's training the kids because he feels like they're not being fair. So Criston decides to train a little bit differently. He matches up Aegon and Jace, even though there's a huge size discrepancy. And what ends up happening is Criston ends up coaching up Aegon while Harwin ends up coaching up Jace. It gets really contentious to the point where Criston says, you know, your investment in this is kind of weird. It's the investment you'd only see for like a cousin or a brother or a son. And when he says that, Harwin starts beating the ever-loving crap out of him in front of everybody, all but confirming everybody's previous suspicions that Harwin is their dad. It doesn't take long for the news about the fight to break out throughout the castle, and when Rhaenyra finds out, she goes to talk to Harwin about it, but she overhears a conversation between Harmon and Lord Lionel, where Lord Lionel is screaming at Harwin that he's really risking his life with this relationship. But it's not just that he's risking his life, he's risking Lord Lionel's life, and more importantly, he's ruining any honor that they had. So Rhaenyra decides to let sleeping dogs lie, and she never talks to Harwin at all, just going back to her
guys,
room.
I'm gonna take a
she
little
sits
break
and waits for her husband.
I'm gonna take a little break. We will be back. Make sure you sub up. Sub up. I'll be back.